Good afternoon and welcome to Ignatian Migration Dialogue. I'm Bridget Cusick, VP for Marketing, Communication, and Outreach at Jesuit Refugee Service USA. Ignatian Migration Dialogue is JRS USA's webinar series featuring JRS leaders and guest experts discussing pressing challenges related to work with migrants and refugees. Today's focus is how faith, moral conviction, and community advocacy can unite to defend those most at risk. In future weeks and months, we will cover topics including federal policy changes, state and local immigration measures, statelessness, migrant deaths, and public safety. And in each case, we will dialogue with an eminent thinker, legislator, scholar, advocate, or other important voice. Now I have the privilege of introducing Donald Kerwin, JRS USA's Vice President of Advocacy, Research, and Partnerships, who will moderate today's discussion. In addition to his work at JRS, Don has held leadership positions in several other Catholic and secular organizations focused on migration and served at both Emory University's Center for the Study of Law and Religion and Notre Dame's Keough School of Global Affairs. He has also, for the past 12 years, edited the Journal on Migration and Human Security, a public policy journal featuring scholarly articles about migration and how to create safe and secure conditions for people around the world so that they don't feel forced to migrate. After about 25 minutes of conversation, we'll take Q&A for 15 to 20 minutes or until we run out of questions. So please use the Q&A button on your Zoom interface if you'd like to submit a question. Don, over to you to introduce today's distinguished panelist.
Yeah, I think maybe the best way to introduce Archbishop Wenski is to say when Bridget was talking about all of the stars and people that we'd have with us in the upcoming weeks, we have all those people rolled into one today. So it's really great to have Archbishop Wenski, who I've known and worked with for many, many years. He was the board chair of the Catholic Legal Immigration Network, and we're going to be speaking a little bit about his, experience with refugees and migrants, and he's been a great champion of them for so many years now. But I thought, first of all, Archbishop, it's great to see you, and thank you for joining us.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, I thought I'd start by, for people that don't know you well, to kind of get a little background on you and how is it that you became so passionately involved and committed to refugees based on your own background. And you grew up in Florida, right?
I grew up in Florida, and I never spent a winter outside of Florida. Orlando's the north I ever lived. But my parents moved to Florida about a month after their wedding, so I was born here. My father was born in Poland, immigrated with his family when he was a child, grew up in Long Island on a stock farm, and eventually made his way to Detroit. And after World War II, he met my mother. They got married in 1947, moved to Florida when Florida was a much smaller state population-wise than it is now. And growing up in South Florida, I always felt very conscious of being Polish American. And, this was growing up in the 1950s in a parish, in Catholic parish in Lake Worth, Florida, near West Palm Beach. All my classmates were all kids from different ethnic groups. We had an Italian, we had an Arabic, Canadian, et cetera, because that was people moving into this area. So, if I grew up in Detroit in a Polish parish, I might not have had a consciousness of being Polish American, but because of the place where I grew up, I was very conscious of it. And I think that that gave me a certain empathy for immigrants. And when I was in the seminary, I learned Spanish, partly because the Archbishop at the time said that he wanted all his seminarians to learn Spanish, and so I did. And I was perhaps the first one that really took him up on it, and I became like the poster child for bilingualism in the seminary for a while. And that was mostly through my interactions with Cubans in South Florida, and so my Spanish has a bit of a Cuban accent to it. But shortly after ordination as a priest, I was assigned in a parish where the pastor was from Spain, the other associate was from Cuba, and myself. So I did the English Mass, but once in a while about once a month, the pastor let me do the mass in Spanish because that was the big mass. That was where everybody was at, and there was at that time too a small group of Haitians that were at that parish. Haitians started coming to the United States, or at least to South Florida, in the mid '70s, around 1973. The first boat people arrived in South Florida. So I was 1976 ordained a priest, and in this parish there was a small Haitian choir, not Haitian Haitian congregation. The choir used to practice next door to my office. So, since I was this poster child for bilingualism, I thought I have to put my money where my mouth was, and so I started learning a few words of Creole just to be nice to people, and the new Haitians going there, and then the next Archbishop of Miami found out about it, and so very quickly I was assigned full time to work with Haitians, which I did from September of 1979 until shortly after I was ordained an auxiliary bishop. So I was ordained auxiliary bishop in September of 1997. So for 18 years I worked with the Haitians in South Florida, and I didn't really say Mass in English, except when I showed up at, diocesan events, because every day I said Mass in Haitian Creole. My arguments with my priests that were working with me were from Haiti, and so they were in Haitian Creole. And so, I became sort of like a missionary in my own backyard. And we did a circuit ride covering, small Haitian congregations from Homestead in the south up to Fort Pierce in the north, out to Immokalee in the west. And I remember, we had a mission church in Miami called Notre Dame de Haiti, which had, I think, 5 masses. But besides those 5 masses, we had 6 other masses in other places, like I said, in those places I mentioned. So that's how I got involved with immigration, because of the Haitians. Because the Haitians, when they came, they did not have the same warm welcome that the Cubans got. And of course, in 1980, when the Mariel exodus happened, the warm welcome that the Cubans had experienced before quickly evaporated as well. And so in the 80s, we had in Miami we were living what's being lived throughout the United States today on this whole debate on migration and immigrant rights and refugee rights and all that. We went through that in the 80s. And one thing I could say is that, what the 80s taught me, or at least taught what I think it taught South Florida, was that immigration was not a threat, but an opportunity. Because certainly South Florida, and especially Miami, has benefited tremendously from immigration.
Thank you. That's some history that I knew most of it, but I didn't actually know all of it, Archbishop. So that's why we do these webinars. We learn. I wanted to, I've been with you before. I remember once being with you in Las Vegas, and there was a Haitian parking attendant who came up to you and knew you. And I've been at your home, fortunate enough to spend time with you, and you've gotten calls about situations in Haiti themselves that you've been asked to intervene on. And so you've kind of become, for Haitians anyway, more of a national figure, or you're known among expatriate communities in a lot of places, and of course in Haiti itself. How did that come about?
Well, I think, being a parish priest with the Haitians in Miami, I presided over a lot of First Communions, a lot of, marriages and baptisms and stuff. And people were taking, videos or photographs and sending them back to Haiti. So even in Haiti, I became known, because it's kind of rare to see a guy that has blue eyes and blonde hair speaking Creole with in a way that if they didn't see me in person, they would think I was a Haitian. In fact, I have had many people walk into my office after having made an appointment with me by phone, and when they get to my office, they don't think I'm the same person they were talking to until I open my mouth. But Yeah, I have a great relationship with the bishops of Haiti, and I've traveled Haiti a lot of times as a bishop. I've preached at various, patronal feast days invited by the various bishops, and so I remember one time. This was before I was a bishop, but I took my predecessor, Archbishop Thomas to Haiti. This was about 1993 or 94, before I was a bishop, and we stopped in to see the ambassador. And the ambassador said to the Archbishop, he says, "Do you know that this man's Wenski is a household name in Haiti?" And I said, "Well, I didn't know that."
It's I spent some time in Peru, and I got a kick out of the fact that the Peruvians call Pope Leo the 14th the U.S. born first Peruvian Pope.
Right.
You had a title like that as well, right? Were you the first?
I was the first Haitian American bishop because Bishop Sansarica Brooklyn was ordained auxiliary bishop of Brooklyn, and he would have been the first, Haitian American bishop. But when he came to Miami, the Haitians at Notre Dame de Haiti said that he was the second one because I was the first one. So, but anyway, the Haitians have been a big part of my life, and they still are in many ways. I try to support the bishops of Haiti and various efforts in that, and in the same way with Cuba in a way, because I think I know every bishop in Cuba, and I know every bishop in Haiti, and they know me. So,
when I started in the field, you took me to a community center where there were Haitian immigrant women serving dinner to the homeless that particular night, which was a real eye opener to me and very inspiring and edifying thing to see. I wonder, like, if you were to speak of the Haitians and immigrants in general, kind of, you started to do this a little bit before. What would you tell people that these communities are like, and the particular members of them?
well, these people, you could say that immigrants in general, and this has been my experience with the Haitians, are almost driven to succeed because they're risk takers and they're decision makers. They decided I can't take this anymore in Haiti, and they took the risk, whether getting on a boat or however they got here. And this American society of ours rewards people that can make decisions and take risks. And so the Haitians, like other immigrant groups, have taken advantage of the opportunities that are provided by America and the freedom to succeed here. And it's interesting because you see Haiti. Haiti is, they say, the poorest country in the Americas, and economically that's true. I think Haiti is very rich culturally and linguistically and things like that. But when you see Haiti like it is, a lot of people think that there's something wrong with the Haitian genes that condemns them to poverty. But if you take them out of that poverty and you put them in a place where there's opportunity and freedom, they thrive. And so there's nothing within the Haitian psychic or ethos. There's nothing in their genes that say these are people that are poor. And I remember at Notre Dame de Haiti, where I was there for 18 years, I would receive people that would come to the church and their clothes were probably still damp from the boat that they arrived in on. And then a few years later, they were asking me to go to their house to bless the house that they just purchased. And now their kids are graduating from colleges and universities, across the country. I remember one man that, he was part of a boat that came over from the Bahamas, and several people. This was 1979, I believe, and several people on the boat were drowned because the smuggler threw everybody overboard, and they were a few feet away from the coastline. They drowned. Well, right now he has two kids. Both of them are lawyers, and it's amazing. And he's a little bit of a businessman and very active in his church.
You're a witness to all that personal history. It's a
Right.
great thing. Yeah.
And these are people that have done very well. I know people that have come here with very little education and gone to night school, got the education, went on to become like a CNA, and then from there an LP and an RN, and are doing wonderful work in the community and providing services that you'd wonder where we'd get them if these people did not come when they did.
Yeah, I mean, I know you've been such a great friend and champion of these different communities. I've actually known you as a great friend and champion of the institutions that serve these communities too, and on a national level and a local level too. You established Catholic Legal Services at the Archdiocese of Miami, and shout out to Randy McGroarty and Miriam Mesadu, who have been there, and they're terrific staff from the start. Yeah, you chaired Catholic Legal Immigration Network, which is the Bishop's legal agency for immigrants. You were on the Committee on Migration at the U.S. Bishops Conference for many years, and I think you currently serve on Catholic Relief Services Board of Directors
Well,
too.
I think I've cycled off of Catholic Relief Services, but I'm still on clinic and I'm still on Migration Committee, so they kind of keep me hanging on there. But
The pastoral subcommittee too, the pastoral sub. Yeah.
and I've served on committees on international justice and peace, etc. So it's been an opportunity really to push the immigrant cause. One time when I was a young priest working with the Haitians, somebody asked me, well, what is your vision, or how do you understand what your work is to me? And I said, well, I would say it's two things. First thing is to make the church visible to the Haitians, because these Haitians were coming in, they didn't know the language, they were black, most of the Catholics here were not, and so it would have been easy for them not to see the church. In fact, I remember going to a place like in Del Rey, and they said, there's no Catholic church here, and I said, no, there's one about 10 blocks away, but the church was invisible to him because it was a church of mostly retirees at the time. So my task and my work with Haitians was to make the church visible to them, and at the same time to make the Haitians visible to the wider church. And I took some satisfaction that in 1987, when Pope John Paul II visited Miami, when he addressed the people at the Mass and at the cathedral, he addressed them in three languages: English, Spanish, and Haitian Creole.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. You maybe you could speak a little bit about how the church in Miami, the Archdiocese, but also some of these institutions are kind of faring in the current environment. I mean, we know how the populations are faring and how difficult it's been to them, but how about the institutions based on your wide knowledge and involvement?
Well, the church is, Miami is a, majority minority population. Most of the people in Miami speak Spanish or Hispanic, and a significant minority also speak Creole, but we also have, Jamaicans and other Caribbean immigrants, as well as Brazilians, etc. So it is a very diverse community, and people feel at home here in Miami because it's easy to find somebody that speaks your language. You step off the plane at Miami International Airport, you wouldn't know that necessarily you're in the United States, because it's so diverse and and so welcoming to people of different languages. So I think that's an important thing. And you mentioned Randy McGroarty and the Catholic Legal Services. This is something that's been existing now for over 30 years, And right now, he has 35 lawyers working full time with him, a staff of about 85 people in 2 centers in Broward and Miami, and they see 2,000 to 3,000 people a month. All immigrants, a very important witness of the churches institutionally being involved with these newcomers. We have, our Catholic school system, a majority of our kids are Hispanic. I have 3 or 4 parishes where the majority of the kids are Haitian or Haitian descent. And so last night, I celebrated Mass in Our Lady of Guadalupe Church in Doral, and that neighborhood of Doral is mostly Venezuelan. And so the pastor invited me to celebrate a Mass in Spanish for the Mass of Thanksgiving for the canonization of Jose Gregorio, the Venezuelan doctor that was canonized along with a Venezuelan nun on October 19th in Rome. I had over 1,000 people in that church, all Venezuelans, standing room only. So, we have people that, there's broad swath of people. A lot of, some people are very nervous, of course, and the Keys, for example. I know there's been a lot of ICE presence picking up Hispanics in the Keys, and in Key West, the church, the Spanish Mass attendance has gone down. The Haitian Mass in the Key West, and yes, there's a Haitian Mass in the Key West, hasn't gone down, but but that's because the TPS doesn't expire until February. So the Haitians know that they're not at risk yet, but they will be very soon, and that's happening across this this community. I've had one of my, in fact, my priest secretary, he was a godfather of a child whose father, whose parents were very active in where this priest was serving, and the father was deported about a month ago back to Argentina, and he was deported because he went to the immigration headquarters to renew his work permit, and they just grabbed him and put him in Alligator Alcatraz and then later Chrome, and then within a week or 2 he was back in Argentina. So this is ongoing, and it's a reality, throughout this community, and so the church has to be a kind of a presence to all of them. I used to go out to Chrome to celebrate Mass with the Haitians from 1980 until the mid 90s, and priests still go out to Chrome now to celebrate Mass. And now we're going out to Alligator Alcatraz. Every Sunday I have a priest that we send out there to celebrate Mass in Alligator Alcatraz. And we have a prison up in Broward County, the GEO thing, and we try to get Mass there on a regular basis as well. So, it's a process of accompaniment, presence, and advocacy, doing what we can, and this legal advocacy is so important because if we can get a solution for someone to stay in this country, it's like you're opening up a future of hope for that person and their families. Right. And what a lot of people don't understand, because when you hear this discussed on the media, they're always talking about illegal or illegal immigrants, but even those that are being classified today as illegal, many of them are not technically illegal in the sense that they have some kind of status here. For example, the Biden administration gave humanitarian visas to about 500,000 people from Venezuela, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Cuba. You could argue about whether that was a smart move or not, but 500,000 people came here. They were sponsored by somebody in the United States. They had to pay their own transportation here, and they got work permits for 2 years. Now, the administration is saying the 2 years up, they're not going to renew it. They're going to have to go back. But none of those people were ever a day illegal in this country, but they will be told to go back. Lots of other people came here on student visas legally or on tourist visas legally, and maybe overstayed their visas and then went into an irregular status. You had people that that came to the border and were admitted into the country, paroled into the country, and parole is not a I'll get out of jail free card in the sense that it gives them a path to permanent residency, but it gives them a legal status and a work permit for them to pursue asylum or another solution. So, there's all different shades of meaning. TPS, for example, some people were never illegal in this country because they were here on a tourist visa when TPS was made available, and so they quickly moved from a visitor visa or tourist visa or a student visa into a TPS status, and so never been illegal, but now we're going to be treated as illegal, and again, TPS has because of the problems with people who say TPS doesn't temporary protected status. The problem with it is that it's not temporary, and that's true. But you have Salvadorians living in Washington, D.C. That have been on TPS since 20 years, and right. The same with Hondurans from Hurricane Mitch, and these are people that if you eliminate TPS, you're going to tell them to go home. But if you've been in this country 20 years, if you've been in this country 10 years, if you've been in this country 5 years, home is here. There's no home to go back to, and that's really where the inhumanity of a mass deportation comes up, because after being here all these years, you start forging connections with this host country. You get married, you have kids, you have kids that are American citizens, you have a spouse that may be a legal permanent resident or American citizen, and all this is going to be thrown into chaos because of the inadequate laws. And in that sense, I would say that a lot of people want to focus their anger on the Trump administration because of his pledge to deport, mass deportation, et cetera, et cetera. But they could always argue back at you that they're just enforcing the law, and in that sense, they're kind of right. They're enforcing the law, but it's Congress that makes the law, and Congress should change the laws. And I think we need to focus on Congress to address this issue, because every time Congress had an opportunity to do something about immigration over the past 20, 25 years, they always decided to kick the can down the road when the pressure was taken off of them. They could have solved the Dreamer issue 20 years ago, but they didn't.
It'd be a lot easier. I mean, it'd be a lot easier now to just legalize people that have been here for a long period of time than do this mass deportation. And I think you're totally right. People don't understand that part of the mass deportation affects people that were legally here, and their status is being stripped of them, and it also affects. I mean, doesn't it affect your priests and your?
We have priests that are on religious worker visas, and those religious worker visas are in a mess right now because of a snafu or glitch in the previous administration's policy of assigning available visas, that they took available visas away from religious workers to assign them to another category of people. But and that has to be fixed. And there's something in Congress, if ever Congress goes back to work, where there's a glitch, fixed to it. But it is a tremendous problem. And what people don't realize is that there could be a very easy fix, politically probably impossible, but very easy, because in the 1920s, when that immigration law was passed, that pretty much shut down legal immigration for a couple generations. There was a provision in that law, and I think my father benefited from that provision because
really?
he came to the country when he was 2 years old in 1910. But I think the law was passed in 22 or 23, and it said that basically anybody, or maybe it was a little bit later, but it
29, yeah.
29, but it said anybody that was in the country before 23 or 22, before January 1st, 1922, could, if they had a good moral reputation, they could apply for legal permanent residency. And that law, helped, regularize that population that was in the country in the beginning of the 20th century. And the last time that law was updated was 1973. So that means, and you go on the immigration website, and it tells you, 1973 legalization. You can sign up for if you were in the country before 1973. Well, that's over 50 years ago.
Right.
And,
55 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And so Congress could pass a law saying the new registry date, and that's what it's called, registry. The new registry date is, instead of January 1, 1973, you could put January 1, 2020 or 2025 or 2015. Any date in the last 10 years or so, make it, and that would, if you put like 2015, 10 years ago, that would take care of about 80% or more of the irregular migrants right now that are at risk for mass deportation.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, Congress did used to move that date up, I think 4 or 5 times in U.S., but it hasn't since the 1986. Yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous. People were very, I think part of the concern about the mass deportation program is not enforcement of the law, but how it's enforced too. That it's indiscriminate enforcement. There's no, it was billed as only going after criminals, and it's obviously mostly going after people without criminal records. The deportation procedure, deportation is deliberately harsh. People are being sent back to dangerous places. The detention conditions are horrid, and they're almost jubilant about those conditions. There's a certain triumphalism about it, which is really disturbing. So
they've continued to deport people to Haiti, which is a stateless country right now. They're deporting people to Cuba, which is in an economic crisis, besides the politics of the whole place. Nicaragua, which is a country that has deported priests and religious sisters and clamped down on the church there. Very oppressive country, and they want to deport people there. It doesn't make sense. And I think, part of it, I think, originally they were looking after the worst of the worst, but, the numbers weren't high enough. And so they started picking up, people that, were sitting in the back of pickup trucks as they were leaving the lawns that they were cutting in the suburbs. A lot of people in the Alligator Alcatraz came in from the Tampa Bay area, and most of them were Central Americans, Guatemalans, Hondurans, and a lot of them were just lawn maintenance people. And in fact, one of the people they snared was a 15-year-old kid that they quickly had to move out of there because that would have been a big blot on them to do so.
I see that I know that you've been very vocal about kind of the federal laws and how they're playing out right now and the Trump administration policies, but you also have a situation in the state of Florida as well. I mean, a state issue, even though immigration is a federal issue, they've of course heavily committed to the president's enforcement policies, even the border enforcement policies. And and want to make it a state crime to enter the state or to re-enter the state without federal immigration status. How they would determine that, who knows? But that's
it's hard to understand what the rationale behind all of this is. And in fact, Alligator Alcatraz right now is still a state-run facility. It's run by the state of Florida. That was part of the issues that when I was trying to get a priest to go in there to say mass. I was being, given a runaround because we'd call somebody and the ICE people would say, no, it's not us. You have to call the state. You call the state. They said, no, it's a federal thing. Back and forth until they finally, had to admit it was a state thing, and then we got into the state. And right now, that's part of the reason why the conditions that at least for access to attorneys and everything like this for the detainees is so difficult because it is a state facility, and anybody that needs an attorney or will have to be taken to Kerwin, which is another 20 miles away, etc. So it doesn't make sense for the state of Florida, or any state for that matter, to be running a detention program on behalf of the state behalf of the federal government.
And you must personally get a lot of pushback and negative mail for some of the courageous positions that and smart, just common sense positions too that you're taking.
I get a lot of support too, and I must say that, and I think I think South Florida gets it in the sense that in the past couple of years our population here has probably grown by 250,000 people, due almost entirely to immigration because of the Cuban influx, the Haitian influx, Nicaraguans, and others. And unlike Chicago or unlike New York, there's been no negative reaction to this migration. We've absorbed it, possibly because a lot of these migrants that have come in have had connections with family members or other people here, affinity with people that are already here that help smooth their way into the South Florida area. But we don't have that harsh anti-immigrant or neo-nativist reaction that you see in other parts of the country. We did have it in the 80s, but as I said earlier, the 80s showed us that immigration was not a threat but an opportunity, and so South Florida has kind of embraced it. You don't see this anti-immigration feeling or sentiment that you see in other parts of the country, or that you may see in the northern parts of Florida.
Yeah, I guess I'd want to ask you a question about how that plays out with politicians, because there used to be strong, bipartisan support in many places, including in Florida, maybe particularly in Florida. And I'm thinking of, Senator Rubio and Congressman Diaz-Balart and Congresswoman Salazar now, and others.
And Carlos Jimenez as well is open.
That's right.
Now, I think basically what we got to do is, I said, we have to press Congress to change the laws, but I think also we have to approach the president and I think we should tell him that he should take a victory lap and for having closed the border, controlled the border, and we could perhaps applaud him for doing that, and I don't think anybody would. Not too many people anyway would be opposed to taking dangerous people off the streets. Nobody wants criminals loose in their neighborhoods. And so, getting the worst of the worst, off the streets, you should take a victory lap for that. But now it's time for him to pivot. And, the president has always said that he wants to have the biggest economy ever. And if you're going to have the biggest economy ever in the United States, you're not going to do it without the labor force participation of the migrants. And various people that are close to the administration would tell him that. People from the agricultural industry, people from the hospitality industry, which he would know very well. as well as the construction industry, which he knows very well too, will tell the president that we need these workers. Mm-hmm. And so it's time for him to pivot, and hopefully people can reach him and convince him to pivot. I remember shortly before his inauguration, he had an sit-down interview with the Wall Street Journal, and in their editorial comment on it, he said that he recognized that there are many good people that are this, but he has to talk tough right now because it's time to pivot now, and the neo-nativist base of the Republican Party is not more than maybe a third of that base, and so because you don't see that among the business community, the Wall Street Journal people, pretty much a Republican newspaper, but always pro-immigrant, right? Always pro-immigrant. So there is an opportunity, I think, for us to encourage the president to pivot. Now, in order to do that, you can't be calling them names. And unfortunately, some of our friends on this side of the immigration debate, make a strategic error by calling them by name calling and all that, and that just doesn't advance us towards a reasonable accommodation, which I think we should be able to have, because if you want to have that big economy, you're going to need the workers to do it, and he should realize that. He does realize that. So
yeah, you're right. I mean, it's very much at odds with the major goal of his administration.
Exactly. So I think maybe people have to if anybody knows Susan Wiles, we probably have better luck with talking to her than Stephen the other side. But
I was going to
and Susan Wiles could probably tell him about the polling, because the polling, I think, is going to support a pivot towards a more reasonable solution than just relying on massive deportation.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you what your advice would be to President Trump if you were asked, but I think you just provided it.
Yeah, pivot.
Yeah, pivot. Yeah, and maybe we have a couple of questions, but let me ask you one final question here, a formal question, which is what would you say to Catholics at this point, particularly immigrants, of course, but non-immigrants, others that. How should they be living out their faith and their responsibility to be in solidarity with their brothers and sisters, and not just Catholics, but people of goodwill in general?
Well, I think again, for Catholics, I think we should remember where we come from, who we are, and there's not a Catholic in this country that is not maybe a generation removed from the immigration experience. Because when the United States became a country, an independent nation, there was no diocese in the United States. It was only after independence, and then there was one. And the church grew in the United States to be 25% of the population, and that growth is totally due to immigration. And so I think some Catholics have to be careful. That they're not swept up by people that are masking their anti-Catholicism with a anti-immigration stance. I remember hearing one talk show host saying, "Oh, these bishops are shilling for immigrants because they want the immigrants to fill up their empty pews." But it's not that. We see it as a human rights issue, a human dignity issue, and again, in the trenches, those of us that have worked with immigrants realize that they are good people, and they can become good Americans. You didn't mention it, but there's going to be a debate soon, because we'll be going to the Supreme Court about birthright citizenship, and the Western Hemisphere has the Americas has had birthright citizenship in every country except the Dominican Republic. And that was partly because that, these new countries, these new nations of North and South America wanted immigrants to, populate their countries and they saw that birthright citizenship was the fastest way of integrating them into the country. And that's really what birthright citizenship has done. Because, we always hear stories about the first generation Americans, and we tout their success. And, these first generation Americans, their parents came and suffered and sacrificed, and look at who these people are, first generation. And that's because that's the integrative power of citizenship. In other countries, like in Europe, where you don't have birthright citizenship, say in Italy, for example, you don't have first generation Italians, you have second generation migrants. And that makes it harder, not easier for them to integrate and to assimilate. Birthright citizenship has done very well by the United States, and I think the courts should defend it and protect it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a constitutional right, but it's also the great integration tool in U.S. history.
Exactly.
So you're 100% right. I think too, like we get, the church gets accused of doing things to get people in the pews. And I mean, that is a goal. We want people in the pews, right?
Well, we want to save their souls. That's right. But
right. Not for other reasons.
Right.
So thank you, Bridget. I don't know if you want to take some questions at this point.
I would love to take some questions, and we do have some really good ones. First, I would like to start with Kevin's question, which is, should the Bishops' Conference and bishops on the administration's Religious Liberty Commission be speaking more often and more forthrightly, in your opinion, on the treatment of immigrants and the need for a pivot to comprehensive immigration reform?
Yeah, I think we have to be, keeping the issue before the administration that we need a comprehensive immigration reform. As I pointed out earlier, it's very simple to do it by updating the registry list. That would be a very simple solution. But I think we have to remember that. We can't just be talking to the enforcers of the law, which is the administration, the executive. We have to be talking to the legislators, the ones that make the law, our Congress people. And we have to hold their feet to the fire and be talking to them and insisting with them of their responsibility to fix the laws that are not working efficiently right now, and to provide laws that are going to be more just and also more efficient.
Thank you. And here we have another question, and this one quite different. What forms of public witness do you believe Catholics should be engaging in to support migrants and refugees right now?
Public witness, well, I think, again, recognizing the immigrant as a brother or sister. I think not making them other, making them part of us, and that means being, not being comfortable about them, making sure that your churches or your parishes are welcoming, that we try to be coherent in our beliefs. And, again, maybe one of the public witnesses that we have is, again, to talk to our elected officials and tell them that we want to hold them accountable to make our proposition on what constitutes human flourishing. As people of faith, we have something to say, and we have a proposal to make. Sometimes they want to shut us up, saying that we don't have a right to impose. But I always tell people, I can't impose anything because I can't carry a Glock on my hip. Unlike a border patrol person or a police officer can. I can't impose, but I can propose. And as Catholics, we have to propose, what can advance human flourishing. And immigration reform is one way of doing that.
Thank you. We have a question related to something that you did speak about. You spoke about the nationalism aspect of what we see going on, and that it is probably not more than 1/3 of the base. But we do have a question about specifically white nationalism. It appears the intent of mass deportation, aside from fear and cruelty, is white nationalism. Sadly, there is a, quote, Christian aspect to this nationalism. Are the bishops speaking about how to address this, why it's dangerous, and why it's not Christian?
Well, I think I referred to neo-nativism, which is a type of a nationalism type of thing, neo-nativism, which has its roots in the Know Nothing movement of the early 19th century. And back then, Italians might not have been considered white people, and I remember one time I was asked to give a talk in Houston, and I was speaking, and Bishop Fiorenza, Archbishop Fiorenza of happy memory, he's an Italian American, I'm Polish American, and there was a sociologist that was talking about the sociology of, breaking down people of Anglos and Hispanics and all that. And so after he finished, I got up and I said, what a difference 100 years makes. That after 100 years, somebody with the name of Wenski and another one with the name of Fiorenza would be considered Anglos. So, but this neo-nativism, washes over into this nationalism. But this nationalism, this is not only a fever in this country, but we see it breaking out in other countries as well. We see it in Great Britain right now, and in parts of Europe. We see it in the Dominican Republic with their history of with the Haitians there. So it shows that the consequences of original sin are quite universal in the human condition.
Thank you again. This one is on a little bit of a different tack. There is some news, of course, about religious worker visas undergoing greater scrutiny and issues. What would you just say to someone who says about this issue, well, no big deal. They can leave and come back. They need to get their paperwork right.
Well, and that's what they usually do. But when they leave for a month and then they come back and they get their paperwork. But under the present system that got messed up, as I said, a little over a year ago, it could take a year. And that's kind of very disruptive. If you have a pastor in a parish and you're going to pull them out of the parish and say, go and leave and don't come back for a year, that's not very feasible. It's not very a way to do it. And the church in the United States has always counted on the supply of foreign priests to help us out. In Florida, in the 50s, the majority of the priests were from Ireland, or even from Spain, and now we have priests from Africa or Haiti or Latin America coming, and India, and they're providing services to the Catholic population, and so legitimate services, and I think it's a good accommodation of our government to support that, because again, we want strong communities, strong families, and religion plays a big role in that.
Yeah. A little bit of a different take on asking some clergy-related questions. This question comes from Teddy. I wholly believe that learning the native language of our migrant brothers and sisters is critical, and I appreciate your comments on your own efforts to do so. Are there any efforts in the seminarian process to encourage learning other languages?
Yes, well, here in South Florida, we have our college seminary and our theologiate, one in Miami, one in Boynton Beach. Both are bilingual institutions. Uh, and so therefore the idea is that the student there, if he doesn't know Spanish, he'll learn it by the time he finishes the seminary. And if he doesn't know English, which happens to, he'll learn it before he finishes the seminary. And so that's important because I think you know you know praying in the language that you're most comfortable in is very, very helpful and very affirming. And I think I used to say when I was at Notre Dame to Haiti, I'd say the Haitians, they spent you know 6 days a week knowing that they were in a country that didn't really want them, that they were had problems because of this, that culture. But at least on Sunday when they went to church, they could feel at home. They could feel at home. And the church should be the home of all God's children, because the church is the Father's house. But the best way to make somebody feel at home in their Father's house is to speak the mother's tongue. And that doesn't stop them from learning the language of their country, of the new country, because they learn it very well. And right now, Miami, which is mostly 70% Hispanic, is speaking Spanish, but it's also very bilingual. They speak English as well. I can be at a mass and I can switch to the language, and people will answer me correctly in either tongue.
Well, thank you. I think that probably those are all the questions we have time for. John, closing remarks?
Yeah, thank you, Bishop. Archbishop, I just wanted to thank you again for being with us. I don't know if there's any final words that you'd like to give. I'm just always so grateful for your wisdom and your witness and your leadership to all of us on these issues over so many years.
I'm grateful what the Jesuits are doing. Grateful for the Center for Migration Studies, and for so many people around the country that are trying to do well by the newcomer. And so we thank you, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Archbishop.
God bless.